Glad to have you back. Yes, this is still Rise and Shine, reaching you live from the beautiful hills of Abiakuran. And we've been talking about domestic violence and how it affects the life of children in our society. Quite frankly, in the recent days, in few days now, for few days now, we've been having a lot of information in public space, and there seems to be an awakening on the need to stop violence against women and to save the next generation of children from some psychological implication it might have on them. And of course, so joining us today to talk about this issue is a trained children teacher from Children Evangelical Ministry. And of course, he is Nsikarabasi Sunday Udo. Great to have you on the show today.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be part of the show.
Well, Francis, I'm quite excited to see that men that are more, out there lending a voice on domestic violence, and quite frankly, men are more of the abusers than women, and that 21st century men are waking up to the call. Thinking about say, how bad is the situation for children?
We cannot exactly say how bad, but bad is bad enough.
Mm.
And it's terrible. It's a lot. Because for children, it's what molds them. Their environment is what molds them. Whatever they go through as young people is what they eventually become. So everything that happens in their environment is as important as that. So domestic violence affects them directly and adversely.
Okay.
So we know that Osinachi's children have come out to say that their father reportedly, because we cannot certain at this point because the man hasn't spoken,
Yeah.
that he used to make the mother go naked and have them watch while he's parading her around naked and beating them, and then that apart from that they used to go to church. He will carry them inside the car, and then the mother will be left stranded in the sun, and they will drive past and they'll just wave at the mother and pass. Now, for children who have undergone such orientation at such early stage, and probably for years, how can we go through the process of getting their mind off such negative impact?
Okay, so like you said, reportedly, it sounds like it's not true, right? But the fact is, okay. So I've been trained with children evangelism ministries a long time ago. I've worked with the children's Sunday school for a while, and these things are true. There's some things that children will tell you, and you're like, is it in this world? But these things are true, and so the story might likely be true. And these things affect them. How do we get to help them? First of all, you have to be patient. You have to be intentional, and you have to be kind-hearted, because these children now become aggressive. They're unnecessarily anxious. They become agitated over every little thing, and then they seem to play back these things that they see in their environment. So as an adult that is not like their parent, for you to be able to help them, you have to be intentional about it. You have to be conscious, because there are sometimes that you'll be like, I'm tired. But you have to be intentional about it. Show them care, show them love, listen to them, give them the experience that they've not had in their space. And then eventually you start talking to them. This is how to not do this. This is not the right thing. Oh, I know this is what happens in your space, but no, this is not what should be.
Oh well, I know that is an approach that is fair enough, but frankly, I would like to, dig deep into your experience.
Okay.
We understand that children talk a lot when they're among their peers, like in the children's section in churches, like in schools, and all of that. What is the worst case scenario you've had from a child, and what has been the effects, the impact on the child's relationship or behavior in the space?
Okay, so there's a particular child that when they're having like lunch, when they're eating, all of a sudden you just see the child push the plate away, scatter everything on the floor. So it happened for a few times, and I'm like, something is wrong. Someone said, come, what happened? Why are you always, we say, my father used to do that.
Hmm.
So it's like, maybe the father is eating and talking, and then he throws the meal away and then starts getting violent and all of that. And then I have another experience of an older friend. This one is actually a friend that she's outrightly insulting, disrespectful to especially men. And then if you are a man that is close to her, she doesn't let you pick the bills. She does the bills. So I noticed it and I tried to follow up. And then one day I intentionally said, okay, let me take you out. Took her out and then we did a few drinks. I paid. And then she started ordering another set, almost equivalent to what I spent. And then she paid for it. And I sat down and looked at her and like, there's something wrong with you. What happened to your childhood? And then we started talking and realized that her dad was always abusing the mom and all of that. And that was because, and she felt that because the mom wasn't buoyant enough to be taking care of herself and abuse. So she's like, no man can foot my bills. No man can do this for me. No man. So it affects her relationship with men. And she feels like, oh, these people, they will insult you because you don't have your money. So she's out to get money by all means, to be an independent woman, to be on her own. And then she disrespects any man around her. It's as bad as that. There are many other stories.
Well, in the whole, you see that it has affected them psychologically. But in the ripple effect, what would you say as an expert? How would you say, in terms of meeting the child and relating to having knowledge of what is happening at the family level, is there any form of help that can be done to extend, to reach out? Because perhaps maybe the children of us in our team must have had these discussions in class. Do you think there's something that the teachers would have done to succor the situation at home?
So yeah, so I think that teachers, like I said, intentional teachers should, as a matter of factly, take detailed attention of the young people in their space. Try to talk to them. Sometimes they come to school gloomy. These things manifest in depression. Some of them don't interact with other children when other children are lively there. So you notice this. Try to talk to them. Try to be their friend.
Now, what I'm asking is this: do you think it's okay if you notice that a child is going through this behavioral
Okay.
attitudinal bad behaviors as a result of abuse or violence in the house? Do you think it's in the place of a trainer like you, to lay a formal report in the police or maybe to any authorities that can help enumerate the situation at home?
Yes, I think it's our responsibility to do this because it affects the society at large in the end. So yes, if you notice this, first of all, interact with the child, get to understand, and please report, because you're not just saving the child, you're saving the entire society. You're saving the future.
Okay, so like you rightly said, I think before you came on the show, we talked about the need for societies to be more responsible, to be more responsive to the things happening around us, and of course to be more intentional and deliberate in taking decisive decisions, and not to just say, okay, he's this problem, he's that problem, and because he or she is not asking for help, therefore we shouldn't go to help. Now, has there ever been a situation within your line of experience where you've actually seen a situation with a child and then go a step further to take the necessary measures to maybe notify the church authorities, for instance, and then probably the case gets to relevant security agencies? If there is, what was the experience like for you?
Okay, so this wasn't like someone in my space. It was a child in I visited a friend in Port Harcourt and I noticed a child who was not okay. He was just radical in the environment, violent and all of that. And then I saw wounds all over the body. And I asked and they said, oh, that the dad comes back, beats the mom, and then of course beats the children. And then we tried to I called people. It wasn't, it wasn't in my space, so I couldn't really get around to people I would have loved to. And then I called a few people and they were like, no, 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 no. You have to stay out. That's how it is here. A lot of people say, it's their family. Stay out of their family. And it was really traumatic because you could see that the child needed help. But at that time, the people in the environment could not help because everyone was like, no, Naso you dey be for this side. Oh, that's how that man is. I don't want problem. Oh, I don't want him to come and start attacking my own family. And that's how we lost it.
Mhm.
It's a beautiful thing that we sit and talk about all of these issues. But at this point in time, I think for experts and for society, there's a lot that needs to be done.
Yeah, of
And like you
course.
rightly mentioned, I mean, these things are happening to the children because the parents are involved. And it would be of no use, you would agree with me, if you take the child away and then begin to treat the child right, or begin to counsel the child, and then that child gets counseled and then returns to the same environment and continues to witness the same thing. How do you how do you handle such scenario? How can we guarantee that if peradventure, because I know there are some churches, there are some scenarios where the school environment, for instance, I've been exposed as a teacher in a nursery and primary school environment where the school counseling or counselor begins to take the child and begins to counsel, or what your mom does is not right, or what your dad does is not right, and then they counsel the child, and the counseling just ends within the school environment, and that's all there is to it. So what would you advise in such scenarios for persons who would say, oh, my authority is limited to the
To the
school
school.
environment or to the church environment where I'm exposed to this child?
So it just goes back to a lot of work, because you're not going to be able to take this child out of the house, right? So you just know that you wait till the child returns to school and then you fire back. It's going to be an extra work, because you will deal with the child in school and then pray that whatever happens in the how many hours the child leaves you does not undo whatever you did, and then you wait to top up. I think basically that's what it is, because except there's a possibility of having a facility that you can move children to, which I don't know how practical that can be, but the only solution that I know is for you to keep
Well,
instilling
it's
this in the
practicable
children.
in other climes where
Yes, but
a
here
child is noticed to be amongst parents, then
they
the
take,
government
yeah,
actually takes custody of
that
the
one
child
already.
away
The
from that
government is in
environment.
charge of this. The government is involved, and then when they notice this kind of things, they take the children away from you. But in this particular space, if you want to go and carry somebody's child now, it might be much more than you thought about. So
Mm,
I think it's just for us to keep
yeah.
talking to the children.
No, I feel talking to the children might actually expose the child to some risk factor because, quite frankly, children, as naive as they are, might not know when to talk in the house or when not to talk. For instance, you have an abusive man in the house who is always beating up the mother. And then at some point, the child might be crying and say, "Daddy, stop it," leave that," and all of that. And the man aggressively might have to spank the child as well. You shut up and all of that. These things happen sometimes, and we see them even in movies. But I feel having the school talk to the child, or there should be a redirection to this, to how these issues are tackled, rather than counsel the child. The child getting some counseling shouldn't be, oh yes, what mom is doing is not right, or what dad is doing is not right, because chances are that they'll replay that at whenever such attacks happen. Chances are that you should work more on their psychic, on how to remain stable while approaching the issue from the parents' angle. Invites the parents to the school and said, yes, this is affecting your child's educational development. Yes, this attitude makes him moody in class. He doesn't learn, he doesn't remember because he's always sad. And to a parent who actually cares about the development of his or her child, might want to do something about it.
I like the last thing you said, to a parent who actually cares. Most toxic and violent people do not care about what happens to other people. All they care about is how they satisfy themselves. Is how it works. It's all about them. So most times, calling the parent to come and say, "Oh, your child is moody in school. This." You might also land the child in another abuse, because they will beat up the child. Why did you go to school? Oh, you want to tell the world that I'm violent. You want to do this. So it's a dicey situation. But I feel like when you uh, when you understand the situation, when you speak to the child and you know how the situation is, probably call the parent maybe that initial time and speak to the parents. You're able to feel their pulse and understand them and know whether this is the kind of parent that, okay, if we do use this method, it will work. And then understanding, when you talk to the parents and you understand them, you will now go back to the drawing board and say, okay, I want to deal with just the child. So you talk to the child and you tell the child, okay, when you go to the house, whatever happens, keep calm. Always recite this when this is happening. So maybe when your dad is fighting your mom and you cannot, keep saying, oh, better days are coming. This is going to change. Just keep talking to yourself. Try to stay stable. Don't say anything. Don't fight your dad so that he will not fight you. Try to work with the child's psychic. But if you notice that the parents feel remorse and they can actually change. You can now say, okay, let's involve the parent. Okay, don't do this, don't do that. Then you can now say, okay, we are trying to fix the child through the parents.
Mm.
So I feel it's just about understanding the situation and the persons involved.
Well, let's go on a short time out while we take the report again, and then we'll close up on this conversation. We'll return after this. Glad to have you back. Yes, this is your Rise and Shine, and sadly, as it is, the conversation is actually, getting more intense. But we must find circle for the child because we believe that the next generation have to get it right. Perhaps it was a fault of upbringing for present day youth. So the target is on getting the children safe to avoid a replay of violence as it is, or to a large extent minimize it. So yes, as a student teacher, I would like to take your last thought on this. What do you think is a way forward?
Way forward is for everybody, show love to people around you. If you see children act irrationally, please don't be fast to condemn and judge them. You do not know what they are going through. You not know what has been their foundation. You don't know what they go through on a daily. Try to be, I think everybody should be actively involved in this now. Try to interact with younger people around you. Try to find out why they're acting in a certain way and try to be helpful. Show love. So children who come out of these homes do not even know what love is. There are children that when they see parents come to school to carry their words and they hug them, it's strange because in their house those kind of things don't happen. So once in a while, if you can extend a hug to other kids, please do, because they need it. And be intentional about talking to people so that you can be helpful to them. I think that's it.
Mm.
Okay, I think guys that pretty much says a lot. But before I let you go, there's an aspect that is lacking. I
Okay.
know that, like we've rightly mentioned, in other climes you have government create these situations. But I don't want to bother myself with that because that would be like having a long walk to freedom. Yeah, we might not possibly get that coming
Mm.
out anytime soon. But then I'm more particular about what happens to these children when they cannot access help and then they grow up with that mindset, they grow up with that mentality and become adults who eventually become husbands and wives who eventually becomes fathers and mothers. How do we handle such scenarios?
So, in African society, we rely on, we fall back to religion. So I could say pray because what happens to, the thing with growth, so this person is coming out from this background. This person is going to be a better version of this. So this person is going to be more toxic, probably with a lot of civilization helping out, with technology helping out. The person is going to be worse than this other person.
As an advanced
And
version of toxic.
you got that. So I just think we should pray. God, may these people not enter our space. Or God, help them. Because I really don't know what can be done in this climb now. Because you cannot even take them away. You cannot. First of all, these people need to understand that there is a problem. They themselves need to know that there's a problem. They have a problem. First of all, before you can even say, okay, let's help them. And then what are the possible help channels in this space? There's just a few, and that is just talking. And most times it doesn't work. You
Okay.
need to take them
But
out of
there are some
environment for.
NGOs that are responsible. I know for lack of modalities, we couldn't have a guest who was supposed to be here, but then she's an NGO. She runs an NGO that handles cases of these children, like a help center
Okay.
that can actually
You
facilitate
take
that,
them out of the
take
home.
them out, and
Oh,
yes. And so
awesome.
I feel to a large extent, people should try to, research to get to
Support,
find out,
yes.
and then come up, or
If there are NGOs
individuals
like
can
that, they
come up
can
with other
support
NGOs.
them.
Yeah.
They can support, personally. I think the thing that happens in this climb, we must help ourselves. So if you see an NGO like that, please invest in them, build safe houses for them, build hospitals for them, support them financially. So we don't have to say, okay, let's wait for governments because, okay, so let's do it individually with these NGOs, bring out these people, put them in a safe space where they can think sane thoughts, and then I think that's a progress.
Okay.
Well,
One last thing, since you're coming from the church,
Okay.
do you think the church does enough in terms of counseling for intending couples to give them the right footing to get into better relationships, regardless or not they had a bad upbringing?
Do I think the church does enough? Enough.
Your pastor will come after you.
So well,
But regardless, you still have
Well,
to
it's
give a
general.
response.
It's
You,
not
you
limited
still
to
have
no,
to
your
no.
you still
church.
have
So
to
the
give a
word,
response to
yes,
that.
yes, of course. The word enough depends on where you're coming from. So enough could be enough at a particular point, but not enough at another. Now, I think the church is trying, but can do better, because some churches do a month's counseling or some weeks counseling for marriage, and sometimes they wait for other
Does it really
couples.
need to wait for counseling? What
So,
happens to
so
the
I
daily
think that I'm coming
preachings?
to that. So I think they should be now more intense with these things. The church also has to talk about these things on the altar. The pastors have to preach it. They have, in fact, just like we have miracle crusades, we should also have events in church that basically talk about violence, abuse, how to avoid it, how to help yourself. Because now, most of these people can be afraid of pastors sometimes. So I think that if the pastors are more intentional about these conversations, it might help to an extent.
Do you think a simple repentant message can solve a greater deal of these problems?
No. A simple give your life to Christ message. Most of these people have given their lives to Christ, but their characters, their I don't know how to explain this. Their
disposition
is not Christ-like.
How can you give your life to Christ and don't have a disposition of a Christ-like
There's a
attitude?
conscious work,
We
but we are
wanted
not
to
about
wrap
to
up
do
on this
church. But we are not
conversation,
about to do
remember?
church. We are not about to do church today, because giving your life to Christ is a conscious work. You have to start changing patterns and all of
And
that.
by
So
that, churches should be saddled with the responsibility of molding, just like
helping
you
them
have,
work.
yes, helping them work the work and not leaving their eyes on the
Exactly.
target. Because it's not about saying, raise up your hand, recite this, and yes, you are born again. Praise
Yes.
God for you,
Yeah. So
hallelujah.
because
And then tell the person how to grow in Christendom. Tell the person how to overcome anger. These are processes, and there's something called sanctification in Christendom, a point where you actually have a good heart. Do you think the church is missing out on such messages?
I wanted to say this. So the church leaves some of these conversations for some churches, like, okay, for like churches who do single ish, they say, oh, those churches, that's their specialty. No, they shouldn't leave it to some churches and say, oh, that pastor, that's their ministry. Instead, let's have, in my church, in your church, let's have maybe a day in the month that we say, okay, we are talking about the family. Violence in the family, bringing your children up in the fear
That
of God
would
and all
sound
of
like
that.
a seminar topic.
Probably. If it has to be a seminar, let it be. If it has to be a special service, let it be. If it has to be a special session in the church service, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, just like we take 10 minutes to do warfare prayers, we can take 5 minutes to, talk to the church about these things.
Well, thank you very much for sharing your thoughts with us
You're
this
welcome. It's a
morning.
pleasure.
It was nice having you, and we hope that to a large extent, the children, the upcoming generation, would actually, be eluded with the information that you have dispersed, and also a lot
I
of
hope so
persons will
too.
know how to relate with them and to get them out of that psychic negative mentality that they might be growing up with. But well, yes, this is where we wrap up on this particular session.